Fossils. A fossil is a preserved remain or some sort of evidence that something living was there. A fossil could be an original skeleton replaced by minerals. It could be teeth. It could be a shell. It could be a mold or a cast, and that's something that we'll be talking about today. What is a mold? What is a cast? Mold, if you think about your Jello mold, or your cake mold, it's the actual indentation. The cast, however, is the mineral that you filled in that mold. If you had a little ice mold, we had a little ice mold that had little emoji faces so that when you poured the water in and then you froze it, you pop out the ice cubes, and then the ice cubes had these little emoji faces on it. Well, the little silicone or plastic container that had the faces on it, that would be the mold. The ice cube that took the shape of that mold is called the cast. So you need to know what a mold is and what a cast is. So the mold is actually the material that maybe has the shape, and then when you pour maybe concrete or plaster or ice or water in there and it freezes, that would then form the cast. Fossils can be materials that have replaced once living things, like minerals. Fossils may not even be that actual bone or animal. It could be a footprint or a little space where worms dug through, and then that hole that the worm dug through solidified and became a fossil. So that's an evidence that that worm was there. So it doesn't actually have to be the actual organism. It could be a footprint or some sign that it was there. It could even be fossilized poop, and we'll talk about what that is and what that is called. Now, a fossil can form basically in two ways. Number one, when living things die and then they're buried by sediments piling over them. This can happen very quickly when maybe if there's a flood or some sort of burial of the organism by sediments. The sediments slowly harden into rock with pressure, and basically they preserve the shape of the organism. When that organism starts rotting and breaking down, it will then create a mold. Now, another example would be rapid burial and the lack of oxygen. Okay, so the focus is on the burial by sediments. Okay, it can happen slowly, and then another one would be rapid burial and the lack of oxygen. So the lack of oxygen can actually create a fossil. Paleontology is the term that describes the science of studying and classifying fossils. The 5 types of fossils we're going to talk about are petrified fossils, trace fossils, molds, casts, and carbon films. So a petrified fossil basically is when minerals replace all the organic parts of the organism. So petrified means to turn to stone. So basically minerals replace the bones. So when you see a fossilized dinosaur, they're not actually the bones. It's actually the minerals that replaced or took the spot of the bone. Okay, it turned the bone into mineral because of the conditions that were there. Okay, so water is full of dissolved minerals, and basically that water seeps into the sediment and reaches the dead organism. Basically, the water will evaporate out of the soil, and then that will leave the minerals, and the minerals harden in what is left behind of the organism. Here we have petrified wood. Okay, petrified wood is no longer organic. It's not wood. It's actually just minerals filling in the space of where the tree used to be, as the tree is covered by the sediment. So you can see there's iron oxides, which is a compound. We learned that is iron and oxygen. That's Fe2O3. There's manganese. There's oxides, there's silicon, there's copper, okay, in this fossilized tree. So it's the minerals replacing the organic material. Okay, here we have molds and casts. Molds are imprints. These imprints are basically, like we talked about before, when the sediments lay on top of the organism, okay, squish it down, and then basically the dead organism makes a pattern inside all the inside the ground. Then the organism starts breaking down. You have all the organic material, the flesh, the bones, the fur starts breaking down and basically completely disintegrates, but you still have that shape of the fossil, that shape of the organism. Then minerals start seeping through. And so what was left behind, that shape of the fossil, that's the mold, the imprint, right? Now the minerals come down and fill that space, and when the minerals solidify, it takes the shape. That would be the cast. So you have the mold, which is what the original organism made, and it's the imprint. And then when minerals fill that mold or imprint, that forms a cast. Carbon films. Basically, when you have an organic organism, like a plant or animal, usually a smaller thing there, when you have the sediment squishing down on it, usually what's left behind is carbon. It creates kind of like a picture mark, and that picture mark is from the carbon that's left behind from the plants or animals. Now, plants usually are going to have a lot of carbon films. Smaller animals like dragonflies or insects, maybe some lizards, will also leave behind a carbon film. Trace fossils. Trace fossils, remember, we don't have the organism at all. We just have what's left behind showing that the organism was there. So we have footprints, we have maybe little wormholes, we have coprolites, okay? We have coprolites. Those are fossilized poop. Okay, 3 ways in which we can have preserved remains of once living organisms without it turning into an actual mineral fossil. We can actually have flesh or fur. These things can be solidified and save. These things can preserve DNA. One is amber. Amber is actually tree sap that is fossilized. So if the tree sap landed on an insect and trapped the insect inside, and then that amber fossilized, basically that's your preserved remains. If you watch Jurassic Park, that was the main thing, that they were able to drill and get the DNA from the little mosquito. So that was the whole premise of the movie that it was based on, was the preserved remains, the blood, the DNA that the mosquito got. The tar pits, they trap different things such as mammoths and so forth, and keeps the bones from decaying. Okay, and then the last thing is ice. Mammoths as well have been found, in which mammoths have been found preserved inside the ice, preserving hair and other parts of the organism. I think there was a mammoth that they found that it was still chewing food, so there was actually organic material, plants inside its mouth that didn't break down yet. Fossil fuels are sources of thermal energy that come from dead organisms that went through some anaerobic decomposition. So it went through some anaerobic decomposition or some anaerobic breakdown. Anaerobic means without oxygen. So the focus here is these can be fossilized trees, fossilized plant matter such as coal, or even microorganisms that are compressed and broken down into petroleum, which is oil. 3 examples are coal, natural gas, and oil. Now, fossil fuels make up close to 85% of the world's commercial energy. These fossil fuels, basically make up the majority there, as you can see in the picture. The one that is used the most is oil. Coal is the second, and natural gas is the third. Now, coal is going to be one of the filthiest. Coal is going to cause the most pollution, even though it's the cheapest. Coal is carbon rich. It's organic matter squeezed down and fossilized. So plant matter squeezed down and fossilized. It is primarily carbon. It's organic. Now, the U.S. coal does have a high sulfur content. That element, we talked about that. Europe and Asia, North America is pretty much the same. So generally in those places, then it drops off in Russia, Africa, and South America. Natural gas. Natural gas is basically when you have your plant matter, your microorganisms that are squeezed down. It's going to, as that's broken down, it's going to release gas. And basically that gas, we know it is a gas. It's not a liquid. Coal is a solid. Oil, petroleum, is a liquid. And then here we have natural gas. Now, natural gas is generally methane, which is CH4. When people burp or they pass gas, that would also be methane, CH4. So the breakdown of organic matter, whether it's happening in your body or in nature, will release this gas. Now, this is going to be cleaner to burn than coal. So as we break it down, as we use it, has less of a carbon dioxide production. And carbon dioxide impacts the greenhouse effect. So the main natural gas reserves are going to be found in Russia and Asia. So we can actually see how Russia was not a major coal distributor. The last one is petroleum. You saw this in your lab. There was that word on the lab manual about petroleum. Petroleum is oil. Now, oil is primarily marine organisms that were broken down and decomposed, giving off these chemicals of hydrogen and carbon. These chemicals, these compounds, are called hydrocarbons. Now, petroleum, as you can see here in this picture, I really want you to be aware of this picture, especially the top one. You can see the oil in this little space of the strata. Remember, strata means layer, so they dig through the earth, and then we have a space. So basically you have water on the sides. Well, oil is going to be less dense. It's going to flow on the water or on top, so majority of the oil is on top. But between the oil and the strata, you have a space. Now that space is actually not empty. It's filled with gas. So just like the air we breathe, we look around our room, it looks empty, but it's actually filled with gas. So in the same way, this gas is going to be natural gas. So when they drill down for oil, they're going to be drilling down past the gas as well. The oil reserves are primarily going to be found in the Middle East. The U.S. does have a certain amount, a small percentage of the world's oil reserve, but our oil is primarily going to be coming from us. Even though we are going to be taking it from other places. And we have the U.S. Consuming the most oil, and basically we see that the world's oil reserves are mainly from the Middle East.